Mr. Speaker, I stand in support of the bill. The amendments provide greater clarity to the responsibilities held by the MCST. However, I'd like to seek some clarifications on the bill. First, I welcome the new provision to encourage MCSTs to put in place design guidelines for safety grills to prevent children falling from height. However, homeowners will be required to ensure that the grills look aesthetically compatible with the building. I'm sure members will agree that aesthetics is inherently subjective, and this could lead to potential conflicts if the design sense of the homeowners and the MCST are not aligned. This was precisely what happened in a case that made the news last year, when a condominium resident wanted to install window grills to prevent his children from falling, but was blocked by the management committee. While I can understand that the MCSTs would not want to ruin their building aesthetics with unsightly grills, I feel that the safety of vulnerable children must take priority. Can the ministry therefore clarify if there can be a clear definition of safety for parties to refer to so that similar disputes can be resolved quickly instead of undergoing a long legal dispute? Next, I would like to touch on fire safety. It was recently reported that 40 buildings in Singapore, including private condominiums, could potentially have used non-class 0 composite panels as cladding on their external walls, which do not meet the SCDFR code. 2 of such condominiums reside within my constituency, and I understand that the cost of rectification is not insignificant. This discovery came about only after an industrial building caught fire in May this year, which claimed a precious life and prompted this review. I'd like to ask the ministry if any lessons have been learned from this incident so that we can proactively prevent similar fire incidents from happening. Moving forward, would the MCSTs be required to conduct a regular fire risk assessment for their buildings? Mr. Speaker, another costly expense that is crucial to our senior safety is the installation of lifts in all private apartments. With a rapidly aging population, there is a need to look after seniors living in all private apartments without lifts. There are several such apartments in my constituency, and during my house visits, the elderly residents living in the upper floors often tell me that they cannot navigate the stairs and feel imprisoned within their own homes. How can the ministries help these groups of elderly residents? Are there any plans to help install or at least subsidize installation of lifts in such old private apartments, similar to HDB's lift upgrading program? If left on their own, it is unlikely that the lifts would ever get installed due to the differing interests between residents staying on the higher floors and those on the lower floors. Next, I'd like to touch on the importance of neighborliness and the limitations that the MCSTs face currently. My constituency has a large majority of private estates. Recently, I had to deal with a dispute similar to the infamous Astrid Hill rain tree case. In gist, the leaves of the trees planted by one MCST had dropped on the grounds of another MCST. This is a daily affair, and arguments often occur over whose responsibility it was to deal with the problem. To resolve such and other similar disagreements, would the ministry consider setting up a mediation board within a cluster of MCSTs or by districts? This would help to provide a neutral platform for the MCSTs to resolve disputes amicably before resorting to litigation, which could be a costly process. Mr. Speaker, I'm strongly in favor of the bill's intent to improve the governance and transparency of running strata developments. However, I believe that we need to take a step further to specify the composition of MCSTs, which will go a long way in ensuring that decisions are made with the long-term interests of residents in mind. Are there any selection criteria to be elected as a council member or to hold key positions such as the chairperson, secretary, or treasurer? Should there be a requirement for such council members, especially those holding key positions, to be Singapore citizens or permanent residents? Having some form of minimum criteria to govern the composition of the MCST would help safeguard against those seeking to use management rights for personal gains and ensure that decisions made by the council would be most well-meaning for its residents in the long term. It would also be good to spell out clearly how monies from the management fund may be dispersed. Is there a limit on how much can the MCST be authorized to spend? For example, some residents have expressed concerns to me that legal costs can be enormous when the MCST pursues or defends a legal case. Would there be a limit that requires a vote before the MCST can authorize such an expense? Finally, why is it possible for the annual general meetings of a MCST to be held without a quorum? It would be quite a stretch to call such AGMs held in such a manner as transparent when the residents are not well represented. Mr. Speaker, it is important that we select key appointment holders appropriately, as this would impact the MCST's governance. Meetings should also be held only when the quorum is met, so that decisions will be representative of the residents' interests. I'm sure that these efforts to improve transparency and governance will be appreciated by the residents in the long term. With that, Mr. Speaker, I support the bill.